Thank you very much. Thank you very much. What I'm here to talk about today, reality straight up. How many of you guys spend a reasonable amount of time on airplanes? Or at least have spent a reasonable amount of time on airplanes? Do you look forward when you sit on an airplane to having some long extended conversation with the person that you're sitting next to? Is that something? No, you don't. So what you do is you sit there and you get a big book and you hide behind it and you do everything that you can do to
actually
turn
spend
the
more time in two places.
Yeah. I've really got a problem on airplanes. Turns out that about 1 out of every 100,000 people can claim to be an astrophysicist. What that means is that when you're sitting on an airplane, if the person beside you figures out that you're an astrophysicist, you are the first astrophysicist that they've ever met. Not only that, at some point they've watched a nova, and they've sat there and they've listened talking about the Big Bang or whatever, and said, boy, I really want to ask this question. Guess what? You're going to spend your flight answering that question. It's just the fact of the matter.
Get over it.
Yeah, especially if you're working on this kind of stuff and you're working on a postage stamp, and I'll brag a little bit about that. One time I was on an airplane. I don't remember how, but I wound up engaged in a conversation with a woman. And after a while, she announced kind of out of the blue, I'm a psychic. Okay, that's interesting. Tell me about it. Tell me why you think you're a psychic. And she said, well, the other day I was thinking about my brother, and my brother called. I'm a psychic. I thought about it for a second and said, tell me, does your brother ever call when you're not thinking about him? She said, oh yeah, all the time. He and I are really close. It's always fun when the phone rings and my brother surprises me with a call. And I said, okay, do you ever think about your brother and he doesn't call? Oh yeah, like I said, we're really close. I think about him all the time. And I said, okay, so you think about your brother and he doesn't call. Your brother calls and you're not thinking about him. Tell me again why you're a psychic. Because the other day I was thinking about my brother and he called. At that point, I kind of let it end. Where do you take the conversation from there? The problem is that that woman did not realize a very simple thing. She did not realize that there are questions about which your opinion doesn't matter. She was completely sincere. She believed that she was a psychic. She said that she was just sure of it. And she somehow thought that if she just said it, that would make it true.
She's probably just as psychic as
Questions about which your opinions do not matter. How many of you guys enjoy superhero movies? Oh, come on. You can. I know you're sitting here amongst Minsons. You can admit that you like superhero, right? If you're going to have a superhero movie, what do you need to make a really good superhero movie?
a good supervillain.
A good supervillain. Absolutely. You need a good supervillain. So I've got a supervillain for you today. My supervillain is the WAG. How many people know what a WAG is? Say it out loud.
I say wild ass guess.
A wild ass guess. That's exactly what a WAG is. The supervillain for today's talk is the WAG. The wild ass guess. Often what you think you know, you really don't know at all. Instead, it's a WAG. It's a wild ass guess. The woman on the plane claimed to be a psychic. It was a wild ass guess. That's what she thought she was. Wild ass guesses make pretty good supervillains, by the way, because they come in lots of, they're hard to spot. They're kind of sneaky. They hide out among real knowledge. They're kind of hard to spot. The first kind of wild ass guess is the I just know that it's true wild ass guess. True belief, self-deception. Call it what you will. The woman on the plane fell victim to the I just know it's true wild ass guess. She just knew it. She was a psychic. That was that. There are other kinds of wags, though. The everybody knows that it's true wag. You guys are familiar with this one as well. How many of you have kids? Okay. At some point, Your kid has gone and done something dumb because your kid's friends were doing something dumb. And you asked your kid, if your friends jumped off a bridge, would you too? Okay. Any parent not had that conversation with their kid at some point? It's, you know, it's just mandatory. You have to have that conversation with your kid. The thing is that the answer is they would. Because people are lemmings. It's just what they are. We fall victim to groupthink. And the reason we fall victim to groupthink is that we evolved to fall victim to groupthink. Think back, oh, I don't know, 100,000 years, sort of in the very early days of Homo sapiens. Imagine that you're part of a group. That group has its own ideas and beliefs and so on and so forth. And you get up one morning, the brain of the lot, and announce, that's just all bogus. What are you guys talking about? That's just BS. What's going to happen to you?
Left behind.
You're going to be left behind. Okay. Are you going to have much of a chance to actually contribute to the genetic future of that group? No. You have evolved. You are at the long end of a line of ancestors who would do anything, say anything, believe anything that their group believed, just so that they could remain a part of the group. Because guess what? If they hadn't, you wouldn't be here. They wouldn't be your ancestor. Everybody knows that it's true wag. Humans are a go-along to get along species. Another kind of wag, the somebody told me that it's true wag. Again, a lot of you, even those of you who don't have kids, you've got a niece and nephew, someone young who loves you dearly, who you love dearly, someone who trusts you implicitly. Everybody have that person in mind. Okay? Someone that just means the world to you and you mean the world to them. Would you knowingly lie to that kid, to that young person, about something that was more important to them than anything else in the world? Would you do it? Yeah. Really? Some of us didn't do this, most do. The point is that just because somebody told you so, even somebody you trust implicitly, does all that actually mean that it's true? Sometimes people know that they're feeding you a line. Sometimes people don't know they're feeding you a line. They think it's true too, and they tell you, and you, oh, must be the case. Sometimes people actually really are trying to take advantage of you. Everybody in this room knows what snake oil is. That magic of, a Western, the guy comes into town and he's selling snake oil, this elixir that's going to cure everything. And then when you get up the next morning, you've got a gut ache, you've still got all of your problems, and you've got an empty wallet, and the snake oil salesman is long gone. Snake oil. There's an awful lot of snake oil out there. Everybody's selling snake oil. Question is, are you buying? Another wag. The I want it to be true wag. Wishful thinking. I just want it to be true. I want it to be true so badly that I just know it has to be true. Here's an I want it to be true wag that I suspect, well, I can certainly understand. It would be really nice. I'd like to lose a few pounds. I'll admit it. I do yoga. I watch my diet. I do all that stuff. It would be really nice, though, if there were some miracle diet out there, some pill, some easy something that I could do that would just make the pounds fall away. I want it to be true. In fact, a lot of people want it to be true so badly that they're just sure that it is true. So what do? They try a fad diet. Does it work? No. They might even lose some pounds, but then they gain back twice as much. Then they try another fad diet. Does it work? No. So on and so forth. There is, in fact, a $60 billion industry out there that is based on the I want it to be true wag. Feeding people's hopes. Away you go. So we've got all sorts of wags. An evil alliance of wags. I just know that it's true. Everybody knows that it's true. Somebody told me that it's true. I want it to be true. What's the problem?
None of it has any evidence.
None of these have anything whatsoever to do with whether it really is true. Now that's something that this group, I think, is very sensitive to. The fact that we live in a world where a very large fraction of things that people think that they know, they really don't know at all. They're wags. Stephen Crane said it extraordinarily well. A man said to the universe, "Sir, I exist." However, replied the universe, the fact has not created in me a sense of obligation. The universe just doesn't care. Reality can give a damn. Believe what you want to, that's not going to change the nature of reality. Reality is sublimely indifferent to your preferences. That becomes an interesting question. Often what we think we know is really only a wild-ass guess. The road to hell may be paved with good intentions. The road to failure is paved with wild-ass guesses. I learned about one of these the hard way. I was a member of the science team that built the first camera that flew on the Hubble Space Telescope. Everybody in here knows a little bit about Hubble, at least. Kind of a big deal. I remember this day extremely well. It was fun. We were out on the NASA Causeway, which is several miles. Anybody seen a shuttle launch? Yeah. So when I talk about the sound that a shuttle launch makes, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But you don't hear it just at first. You know,
It's
you
way
see
up in the sky by the time you hear it.
the shuttle's way up there, and then you start feeling this incredible rumble from the shuttle. On the day, in fact, that the Space Telescope launched, there was a nice low layer of clouds. The shuttle went up into the clouds. They lit it up. It was gorgeous. Just as it got there, we started to feel this incredible rumble. You know, just amazing. It was an incredible moment. In fact, it is strictly verboten to have any kind of alcohol on the NASA Causeway, which did not prevent us for 1 second from breaking out the champagne and celebrating. Because here we were, part of the greatest advance in astronomy since Galileo pointed his telescope at the heavens. Later in the day, here they are, pulling the space telescope out of the shuttle bay, releasing it. Boy, we were excited. A new era was here.
Finally, the weeks of testing were over.
We saw the power system working. The pointing and control system stabilized the telescope. The thermal system put it at the right temperatures. The telemetry system communicated with the ground. The instruments worked. The doors opened. The levers moved. Everything looked great. We had a super telescope.
Ominous
The was
music.
waiting for had arrived. Hubble was ready to transmit its first pictures back to Earth.
Oh, crap.
But something was wrong.
What we had expected to see in those first images were very, very sharp points of light. What we actually saw were kind of big blurry things. In fact, things that at first glance didn't look an awful lot sharper than what we could see from the ground. And we looked at them and we thought,
And we ended up with a situation where we degraded science or canceled science. Which is it?
If this aberration was such a perfect textbook case, why wasn't it caught on the ground?
NASA was in the firing line.
It would be dishonest of me to say this, the mood of the scientist is very happy right now. We're all frustrated, obviously.
What are the possible things that could have happened?
I want to follow up on my colleague's question and see how many straws there are on this camel's back.
One instrument where we have a major problem, of course, is the wide field planetary camera. As prime science is going to be done in the visible portion of the spectrum, we feel right now that there's probably no real science that we can do with the wide field camera at this time. I'll stop there.
The wide field planetary camera was the instrument that I was on that science team. It's really kind of a sickening feeling in the pit of your stomach when you realize the project you have worked on for years, that you have staked your career on, turns out to be a disaster. And it hurts to watch a press conference like that. It's even worse, though, when you go to watch a Leslie Nielsen movie. And here we are in the Heartbreak Cafe, and you can see there's a wall of shame along the back, and there's the Titanic, and there's the Blue Note, excuse me. There's the Titanic, there's the Hindenburg, there's the Edsel, and yeah, there it is, there's the Hubble Space Telescope. And you look at that and you kind of duck and you hope that nobody recognizes you. It's really bad, though, when you turn on The Tonight Show.
You have managed to turn this into a Mensa presentation?
Jay Leno took this thing and ran with it. What sound does a space turkey make? Hubble, hubble, hubble. Hubble became a verb. You didn't need snafu, you didn't need foobar, you didn't need any of those. If you screwed something up by the numbers, you'd hubbled it. That's the way it worked. The reality is this. What we had expected were images like that, roughly 100 times as much detail than had been seen from ground-based images. What we wound up instead was something that looked like that, more like what you'd see through a foggy shower door or something. That's what we expected. That's what we got. The questions that the reporters were asking at that press conference were very, very reasonable questions. If this is such a textbook case, why didn't we find it on the ground? What are the possible things that could have happened? Now, of course, there is a technical answer to these questions. Technical answer is reasonably straightforward, it turns out. The Hubble Space Telescope, the heart of Hubble was the Hubble mirror, the thing that actually gathered light from distant objects, brought it to a sharp focus. The Hubble mirror had to be the finest large optic ever manufactured, by a factor of 10. Had to be the most extraordinary mirror ever built. And there was a tremendous amount of effort that went into that. Not surprisingly, it was difficult. So I want you, in your minds, to imagine the following. Hubble Space Telescope, the biggest big science project in history. Everybody is looking on, but there are problems. NASA is breathing down Perkin-Elmer's neck. Perkin-Elmer is the contractor that actually made the mirror. Congress is breathing down NASA's neck. Everybody is pointing fingers at everybody else, and the problem was Perkin-Elmer was behind schedule and they were over budget. Do you have that in mind, the kind of pressure that must have been? Okay. Now imagine that you are one of the 2 or 3 technicians who one morning is tasked with building the piece of apparatus that was going to be used to test the mirror. Okay? You're one of those 3 poor schmucks that's in the lab that morning trying to do that work. Everybody have that picture. Can you imagine what that feels like? The one thing you know is nobody wants to hear about problems. What you know is that your bosses just want you to get it done because they don't need to fall any farther behind schedule. They don't need to spend any more money. And so you go to put together the piece of apparatus that was going to be used to test the mirror. And when you try to put that piece of apparatus together, well, how many of you have put together at some point a piece of IKEA furniture? Okay, yeah. Does a piece of IKEA furniture ever really go together correctly straight out of the box?
Ours did.
Ours did? Okay. Well, I shouldn't pick on IKEA then. Instead of IKEA, imagine the piece of furniture you get from Walmart. There you go. There you go. Go with Walmart.
Never.
It never goes together. So what do?
Push it, squeeze it.
You push it, you squeeze it, you hammer on it, you use some extra glue, you sort of ignore the parts that didn't seem to go anywhere, and eventually you wind up with your bookshelf, and you put your bookshelf against the wall, and you probably anchor it there just to be sure, and then you start putting books on it, and you hope it doesn't fall over. Okay, and a bunch of you have had that experience, I suspect. That's sort of what happened to those poor technicians who were building the piece of apparatus that was going to be used to test the Hubble mirror. Yeah?
There's a term for the people who allow that kind of pressure to to fall on the people who are actually doing the work?
Yeah.
Bad managers.
Bad managers. Absolutely. They try to put this thing together, it doesn't fit. They even wind up going and pulling some washers out of the drawer to shim it, so that as they're putting it together, their measurements turned out to be what they wanted them to turn out to be. The problem is the following. They were using a laser to measure the positions of things, measuring it interferometrically, for those of you who know about that. And what they had to do is they had to shine the laser through that little hole that's about 1 millimeter across to a surface behind it. And that surface behind it was what they were trying to measure the position of. The problem was that that piece had a paint chip. The anti-reflective coating had come off. And so instead of shining the laser through that, they were measuring the position of that piece. And as a result, they wind up putting it together about 1.4 millimeters out of place. And the rest, as they say, is history. Think about that. Imagine yourself in that kind of a position.
So in other words, the mirror wasn't made properly and the device measured it?
The problem is that when you've got a big mirror, you have to have some way to measure the shape of that mirror. And the way that you measure the shape of that mirror is optically. You build a thing actually called a null lens, is what it's called.
But it was measured in order to manufacture. The question was testing to make sure.
It was measured in order to manufacture. You have to measure it to manufacture. And what they were doing here was putting the piece of apparatus together that would be used to manufacture the mirror, to test its shape and say whether or not it was the right shape. It didn't go together right. Instead of getting to the bottom of it, they lived with it.
I think
they
these
made
things
it
mixed up. The mirror itself has already been polished and is ready to go. You're building something to measure the actual.
No, actually what you're doing, you are building something to measure it as a part of the polishing process.
Oh,
that is to make it be the right shape. What you have to do is you measure it and you say it's wrong like this, and I polish some more. You measure it, you polish some more. You measure it, and you polish some more. So finally you say, okay, it's what it's supposed to be. That's the piece of apparatus that's used to do that. The thing is, those technicians that morning, what did they think the problem was?
They thought the problem was in the instrument.
No, more than that. They thought the problem was that if they didn't get it done, their bosses were going to be all over them. Everybody thought that the problem was schedule and the problem was budget. And they forgot something.
Physics.
They forgot physics. They forgot that there are questions about which your opinion does not matter.
So they didn't
That's a $1.5 billion paint chip.
So they didn't realize that the problem was, they thought the problem was the mirror and not the measurement tool?
We'll get there. The fact is that they measured the mirror and they said, okay, we know the shape. And they went on with business. And they wound up with a mirror, and the mirror was extraordinarily good. Using the measurement tool, it said, boy, this mirror is exactly the right shape. Except, everybody believed it was okay. They told themselves it was okay. They wanted it to be okay. They just knew it had to be okay. What do these things sound like? Wags. Those are wags. There's actually a name for people who imagine that they can make the world what they want it to be by thinking about it. The academic name is postmodernists. Never, ever, ever get on an airplane built by a postmodernist. It's just a really dumb thing to do. These guys even ignored evidence that it wasn't okay. They were building it, it didn't go together right. It turns out, this one's going to blow you off your chairs. It turns out they had two different ways of measuring it, and they gave different answers.
That's a big red light.
Yeah.
Big red flag.
What did they do?
Yeah.
They said, this is supposed to be the good one, so we're just going to believe it. Because they were so worried about schedule and budget that they forgot that there are questions about which their opinions don't matter, and reality didn't care. The universe is sublimely indifferent to what you want to be the case. The road to failure is paved with wags. So the question is the following. Where do wags get their power? Wags have these kinds of effects. Wags are shifty, they hide out, they do nasty things. Why are wags so powerful?
Groupthink.
Because of groupthink. Because of us. The fact is that we feed our wags. Another fun topic, alien abductions. There are a lot of people out there who really imagine that space aliens come down and steal people and take them up to their spaceship and do medical procedures on them and so on and so forth. I was actually filming a documentary some years ago, and the production crew that was filming actually had done recently a documentary on alien abductions. And they had had a conversation with a guy who considered himself to be an expert on the matter, and in fact wound up making a lot of money writing books about it and so on and so forth. His thesis was that most of us at some point or other had been abducted by aliens. But we just didn't remember it because they erased our memories.
Think of the logistical
Yeah.
capabilities these guys have.
But this
We should have hired
cameraman
them.
asked, the cameraman said, wait a minute, if I've been hired by, if I've been abducted by space aliens and they erase my memory, how am I supposed to know it? And the guy with an absolutely straight face said, what you do is when you go to bed at night, you put your underwear on backwards. And then if you get up in the morning and your underwear is on the right way around, it proves that space aliens have abducted you during the night. I guess that space aliens, all they know is the tag goes it back. Now, my real reaction is there are a heck of a lot better ways to wind up having your underwear on the other way. We feed our wags. Space aliens. Imagine that you're one of these people who really believes that there are alien abductions. What do you do to find out about it?
You go to Roswell.
You go to Roswell. What do you do if you don't want to leave your living room to find out about it?
You go on the internet.
You go on the internet. You open a web browser and you put true alien abduction into your web browser.
One of the true ones.
And what you find is that about the first dozen pages that come up are site after site after site of people talking about true alien abductions. By the way, that's a general warning on the web. You guys know this, I suspect, that if you want to know about something that's kind of controversial, if you put it into the web, you can pretty well say, what is the consensus opinion of the first half a dozen pages? And know that the real answer is the opposite. That's kind of the way that it works. The reason for this is because these people think that if they just say it loud enough, they can make it true. So there's a whole community of people who just know it. They keep telling each other it's true. They bring out all of the wags and convince themselves they're really space alien abductions. There's even, psychologists have a fancy term for it. It's called confirmation bias.
Republican pollsters.
We could go off and have an entire conversation about that one, but I'm here with you.
You can't be wrong.
Can't be wrong. No, we told ourselves it's right.
Because this counts.
Yeah. Alien abduction, confirmation bias. What confirmation bias means is that if there is something that you believe is true, what you do is you see things that agree with you and you ignore things that don't. It's just what we naturally do. Confirmation bias. Terry Pratchett, a lot of people in here may have read Terry Pratchett at some point. If you've not, you should. It is absolutely hilarious stuff. In The Truth, Terry Pratchett, he's talking now to somebody who's trying to start a new newspaper, says, be careful. People like to be told what they already know. They get uncomfortable when you tell them new things. What people think they want is news, but what they really crave is olds. Telling people that what they think they already know is true. What we automatically do is look for evidence that agrees with what we think and ignore evidence that doesn't. Question is that going to do away with wags? Is that going to kill a wag? No. That's feeding a wag. That's where wags come from in the first place. We get an idea, and we do all that we can to build that idea up. That doesn't work if you want to kill a wag. What you have to do to kill a wag isn't that. You can't kill a wag by feeding it. You have to do something different. So here we are. We've got ourselves a supervillain with wild-ass guess. We know that that supervillain does damage beyond measure. And we know that the reason the supervillain can do what it does is because we let it. We've got a supervillain. What do we need now?
A hero.
A superhero. We need to get some superheroes. So here we've got some superheroes. We need some superpowers. We need a way to actually fight this wag of a supervillain. Speaking less metaphorically, what we need is a practical way to cut through self-deception, groupthink, snake oil, wishful thinking, and see reality for what it is. That's what we need if you don't want to wind up with roadkill. The answer is remarkably simple. Stop looking for reasons to think that your beliefs are true and start looking for reasons to think that they're wrong. It's as easy as that. Knowing something doesn't mean that you've gone out and found reasons to believe it. Knowing something means that you've done your best to find reasons not to believe it, but have so far failed.
That's falsification, isn't it?
Falsification. Again, for a different audience at this point, I would be talking about Popper's epistemology and going off down that path. Here's the bottom line. I mean, if you're going to take away one idea from the talk, you know, if you want to write down that one thing on a piece of paper, that one thing that you're going to record on your subliminal learning tape and listen to all night, whatever, here it is. Knowing means that we've done our best to show that an idea is wrong, but so far have failed. Does a good, valid idea have anything to fear from this? No. If your idea is really worth holding on to, it'll survive. If an idea doesn't survive, is that an idea that you want to hold on to? No. Knowing means that you've tried your best to show that an idea is wrong, but so far have failed. By the way, you do have to do that honestly. You've got to look at, have to look at all the evidence. You have to be sure the evidence is sufficient. You have to be honest in your appraisal. A lot of people take a wag at being a wag slayer. They say, yeah, I'm trying to challenge my ideas, but then what they do is they go out and they select the evidence that agrees with them anyway. That doesn't work. If you do it, you really have to do it. The way that you get the wag slayer's superpower, the way that you actually implement this is really simple. If there's an idea that you care about, ask yourself, how do I know that? It's really all there is to it. If you've got an idea that you really care about, don't look for reasons to believe it. Start looking for reasons to throw it away. That's how you slay a wag. That's our superpower. Anybody in here ever bought a used car? You bought a used car. What kind of used car did you buy?
A silver one.
A silver one. Okay, you bought a silver. I'm gonna go back to that moment that you bought a used car. So everybody think about buying a used car. I'm sure this is the way that she did it. She walked up and she's, oh, that's a pretty silver car. And she looked at the tires, and the tires were bald, but she thought, oh, no, I'm sure those tires had another 40,000 miles on them. And then she started it up, and black smoke poured out of the tailpipe, and she's, oh, it'll run for a little bit. That's just some crud built up in the engine. It'll all be good. Okay. And then she tried to put it into gear, and it went, and she, oh, no, it's fine. It just hadn't been driven in a bit. I'm sure that all of those problems will go away. Sure, here's your $4,000 for a used car. I hope that's not the way that you bought your used car. No, okay, maybe a little bit.
I didn't look at the tires.
Yeah, I was giving this talk at one point, and at this point, the person who had bought the car sort of did this and said, but it was pretty. The way that you buy a used car, at least if you're doing it right, is you kick the tires, you bounce up and down on the fender and see how the suspension is. You open up the hood, you look in it, you see if there are any oil leaks, you might even have your mechanic come and look at it. You then test drive it. And when you test drive it, you drive it like there is no tomorrow. You always drive a car harder when you're test driving it than any other time, for a really simple reason. If it breaks, you want it to break while the other guy still owns it. Okay? That's the way you should buy a used car. You buy a used car in the way that you really ought to be looking at all of your ideas. If this way of doing things is the way you buy a used car, isn't it worth taking the same amount of care when you think about the ideas upon which you're going to base your life? That's what it comes down to. Why is it easy to do this when you're buying a used car and hard to do it about something that really matters?
You don't own it as much.
You don't own it as much. Exactly. It's easy to do it here because you don't have anything invested in that car. An idea that you really care about, on the other hand, that one's hard. You own that. That's difficult. When it's easy, it's easy. But when it matters, that's when it really matters. By the way, you know, there's a $1.5 billion WAG right there. That $1.5 billion paint chip. It's easy to talk about these things in technical terms because I can point to it and say, there it is. WAGs, though, aren't limited to technical problems. Credit default swaps. Boy, there's a WAG if ever there was one, in all forms. Some people, knowing nothing about them whatsoever, just bought them. Hey, this is great. Some people, well, their whole group was buying these things. Boy, we like credit default swaps. Hey, this is wonderful. Some people just wanted it to be true. Boy, I want a financial vehicle that gets me that kind of return. I just want these to be okay. A lot of people were selling it as snake oil. People were going in knowing full well that these things were dicey, selling them. Lots of people made lots and lots of money off of credit default swaps. Because people looked at credit default swaps and wanted them to be true. And really, it was a WAG. Hostess. Poor Hostess. The Hostess Twinkie. I think they're still going to manufacture Twinkies somewhere anyway. Hostess. People say, oh, the union killed Hostess. The unions didn't kill Hostess. A WAG killed Hostess. Hostess had groupthink. Hostess thought, this has worked for us for years and years and years. We don't have to do anything different. We don't have to worry about the you know, designer kitchen homemade kinds of things out there. We don't have to worry about the falling market share. We don't have to worry about the fact that healthy meals were taking up a larger and larger part of the market. We don't have to worry about any of that. Their groupthink told them that they didn't have to worry about that, and in the end, they wound up at the dumper. The WAG Slayer's superpower: stop looking for reasons to believe that you're right. Start looking for opportunities to discover that you're wrong. It's really as simple as that. Don't bet your future on an idea that can't stand up to the scrutiny. Is life as a superhero ever easy? Think about superhero movies, comic books, whatever. Is it easy to be a superhero?
No, those poor guys.
No, those poor guys. Superheroes, man, they've got it bad. And even before the superhero gets to go out and fight the supervillain, the superhero always has to fight himself. You know, Spider-Man having angst about his new powers, you know, that's just part of the story. It's difficult to be a superhero. It's especially difficult to be this kind of superhero. There are some hard facts of life as a WAG fighter. The first is the most dangerous WAGs are the WAGs that you really, really, really want to leave alone. Those are the ones that really matter to you. Those are the ones that hurt when you challenge. But those are the ones that if they turn out to be WAGs, are going to carry with them the worst cost. Challenging an idea, a valid idea, can only make it stronger, but if an idea can't stand the challenge, it was never anything but a whack. That doesn't mean it's easy to do away with. Tolstoy said it very well: truth, like gold, is to be obtained not by its growth, but by washing away from it all that is not gold. There it is, right there in a nutshell. Another hard fact of being a wag-slaying superhero: this business cuts both ways. I've talked so far. Art, you've got an idea, and you want to know if that idea is a wag or not, so you challenge it, and eventually you might have to get rid of it. So that's one way this goes. Suppose, on the other hand, that there is an idea that you loathe, that you hate, that you detest with all your might.
Like evolution?
Evolution being global warming, we could run down a long list of things that various people are this way. I just hate them. Suppose there's an idea that you hate, and so you start challenging it.
Einstein and quantum mechanics.
Einstein and quantum mechanics. There are lots of these. Turns out, I'll take a quick aside, the Big Bang. Anybody know where the Big Bang, the name Big Bang
It's a derogatory term.
Yeah.
Stable or
Fred Hoyle said that's the craziest thing I ever heard. You guys think the universe began in a Big Bang or something. So it was a pejorative term. So why is it that today I can stand up here and say that I know the universe began in the Big Bang?
Because it's failed to.
Because
failed to falsify.
Because for roughly 90 years, people who don't like the idea have been doing everything they can to show that it's wrong and failing miserably. That's the way that it works. Wag slang cuts both ways. There's an idea out there, it doesn't matter whether you like it or not. If it can stand the challenge, you are obliged to accept it. Unless, of course, you enjoy deluding yourself, and then go on about your business. Do what you will. If an idea can withstand the test, you've got to go with it. This one's a nasty one. Absolute certainty is the worst wag of all. This is one that completely flips people's idea of knowledge on their ear. They say, I know something. I know it, and I'm just certain that it's true. Most people, you ask them about knowledge, that's the way that it works. I found lots of reasons to believe it, I'm just certain it's true. The fact is that's exactly backwards. Here's the logic of it. Absolute certainty. Pete, suppose that you are absolutely certain of something. Is there anything I could ever do to make you change your mind if you're really absolutely certain of it?
No.
No. It's what absolute certainty means. Absolute certainty means that there's nothing that could ever make you change your mind. If there's no way to discover that you're wrong, if you're absolutely certain nothing could ever make you change your mind, is there any way that you could find out that you're wrong?
Yes.
But nothing could ever make you change your mind. You just said that. That's what certainty means.
But that's forceful making. But I can discover it, and that's not forceful.
No, you. If you're really, we could all in this room think of at least one topic about which people have absolute certainty and nothing could ever make them change their mind. Okay? If there's no way to discover you're wrong, then can you make any kind of claim to know that you're right? It's the bottom line. The only way that you can claim to know something is if you say, I acknowledge that it might be wrong, and so keep looking for reasons to disbelieve it. If you want to face reality on its own terms, you can't have certainty. If you insist on certainty, you can never have anything but a wag. Facing reality means acting in the face of uncertainty. It's hard to be a wag slayer. On the other hand, what today you think of as certainty isn't certainty. It's self-delusion. All I'm doing is pointing out that this is the way it really is. That's your logical choice. It's not uncomfortable. If it's not uncomfortable, you're not doing it right. This is another hard one. Party game. Anybody ever played the party game where you're having a conversation with somebody and you step into their personal space a little bit? What do?
Shudder.
Back away. So they step back. They don't even know they're doing it. They just step back a little bit. So you step into their personal space a little bit. What do? They back away because they're a little uncomfortable. It's really kind of fun. If you've never done this, it works. You can, over the course of a half-hour conversation, steer somebody all around the room just by stepping into their personal space and letting them back away. Stepping into their personal space and letting them back away. If you haven't, try it, do it, especially if the conversation is boring, because then at least you can do something to entertain yourself as you go along. That's stepping into your physical personal space. Now think about what it feels like when you step into your WAG space. Okay? That woman on the plane. As I started asking her, well, couldn't it be coincidence? How do you suppose she responded?
Oh, no.
Oh, no. She got angry. She got defensive. She kept saying, if she could have stood up and stomped her feet, she would have done it. As if by saying it forcefully enough, she could make it true. Invading your WAG space is hard. It's uncomfortable. And that's how you know you're doing it right. The real question is this: is it worth it? Is it worth going through all of that pain to try to get rid of your WAGs?
I'm absolutely certain it is.
You're absolutely certain. I'll tell you what, confronting WAGs might be uncomfortable. I guarantee you it's not that uncomfortable. You want to know discomfort. You stand up in front of the whole world and tell you your $1.5 billion new telescope looks like it might turn out to be a piece of junk. Okay? That's a very high-profile idea. But in your life, imagine you're the CEO of a company and you have to go and tell all of your employees that they're going to be on unemployment because you bet the company's future on an idea that turned out to be specious. You've got a problem. Slaying WAGs is a violent, brutal, bloody, take no prisoners business. There's a reason that I chose to use the metaphor of superheroes and supervillains. Because from the get-go, I wanted you to think of this as a violent process. We're not talking about nicey-nicey here. We're talking about no-holds-barred intellectual violence, trying to tear down the ideas that you care about, to find out whether they're strong enough to actually hold on to. This is messy business. And again, the question that you have to ask yourself is, can you afford not to? Here's what it boils down to. It's hard, but can you afford not to scrutinize the ideas that are going to determine the character of your future? I've done an awful thing to you. Again, from Spider-Man, great phrase, Uncle Ben to Peter Parker, with great power comes great responsibility. Going forward from this, you guys now understand about WAGs, you understand what the superpower to kill WAGs looks like. Which means that going forward, if you decide to delude yourself, if you decide to buy snake oil, if you decide to buy into groupthink, you're not doing it because you didn't know any better.
Thanks.
Yeah, okay. He gets it. Why didn't I go and listen to him talk about whatever else they're talking about? You don't get to plead ignorance anymore. I am sorry. I just laid upon you a tremendous burden. With great power comes great responsibility. So if you find that you bought into a WAG, you're not going to have anybody to blame but yourself. A superhero's life isn't easy, and it takes practice. Think back to Space Telescope. Okay. Here these guys were, they were in the room, they were trying to put this piece of apparatus together. Were they using their WAG fighting superpowers very well? No, they weren't doing it all. They were looking for reasons to think everything was okay, and man, let's go forward from here. Did they know that at that moment, the whole world was turning on what they did? Did they know that that was the instant?
No.
Of course they didn't.
If they'd known, they would have done it right.
Now, if they would have known it, they would have gone back and done it right. You don't know that you are at the crucial moment when a wag is about to bite you in the butt until it's already happened, until it's already in the rearview mirror. And at that point, it's too late. Wag fighting isn't something that you do when you realize you need to do it. Wag fighting is something that if you're going to do it, you start doing it today, and you practice it. And then when that moment does come up, when the whole world is watching, then you can woulda, coulda, shoulda. This doesn't work. Okay, so you guys, now you understand about wag fighting? Anybody, any fundamental questions about the way that you fight wags or why you should? Okay. So what are you going to do tomorrow now? You've figured out how to fight wags. What's the obvious thing to go do?
Finish the RG.
Huh?
Finish the RG tomorrow. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Monday.
You're going to go fight wags, right? I hope you're going to go, if you're not going to go fight wags, anyway, I hope you're going to go fight wags. So imagine a scene. Here you go. You go into work on Monday morning, armed with this new idea of a superpower and how you're going to fight everybody's wags. And you walk in and you talk to your group, your team, your whatever, and you say, I'm going to help you. And the way I'm going to help you is I'm going to tell you all the ways in which you were wrong.
Yes, and they're going to say...
Everybody have that scene in mind? I'm a psychic because I can read your minds. I know exactly the scene that you have in mind. It looks something like this. Am I right? Okay. I'm a psychic. Here's the poor guy who came in and told them all that they were wrong. And here's a guy who's about to tear his head off. And she's visualizing him drowning in a bit of boiling oil. And this guy just says, isn't it Friday yet? This doesn't work. One of those hard facts of life is that if you just go in and start trying to tear down what everybody else thinks, it's not going to work very well. When you confront a wag and you're working with other people, you have to confront the idea and not the person. That's the first thing to realize. Boy, that's important these days. With the political climate they're in, wouldn't it be nice to hear people actually talking issues instead of trying to tear each other a new one? But even then, and if any of you are in a management position, if you've got people working underneath you, and say, I would really like to see you do more of that. To have this happen, you have to work to establish an environment where it's safe, where it's okay to be wrong, where it's okay to challenge, where people don't lose face if things don't turn out exactly the way that they thought they were. Even that is difficult. Even that takes some effort. And so the real thing to do is to start with yourself. The place that you start killing wags is with you. If you will allow me for a moment a little bit of biblical wisdom, Matthew 7, why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own? You hypocrite! First take the plank out of your own eye. First kill your own wags. And then you'll see clearly to remove the speck from your neighbor's eye. Start with your own wags. Confront the idea, not the person. Begin with yourself. Do it today. Because if you wait until tomorrow, maybe that's too late. And realize that you're doing it right when you want to stop doing it. It's when you would rather be doing anything else that you're actually starting to get somewhere. Now, fortunately, sometimes even the worst wags you can recover from. Fortunately, Space Telescope was one of those cases. I had the privilege to be on the team that was tasked with fixing Space Telescope, with building this thing. It's called the Wide Field Planetary Camera 2. They took out the first wide-field planetary camera. The astronauts put the second one in. To understand what the fix was, you know, we could talk in a lot of technical detail about it. But think about it like this. Without my glasses, I don't see so well. With my glasses, I actually see substantially better than 20/20. My eyes have an error. My glasses have an error. Those two errors cancel each other out, so I get good vision. In the case of the Hubble Space Telescope, the way that it worked is that you were stuck with the glasses. The primary mirror was there. You were stuck with it. So what did you have to do? You had to build eyes that worked well with the glasses. And that's what the repair boiled down to. Building instruments that had the same error in it, but with the opposite sign, so that the two would cancel each other out. And it worked remarkably well. Here, for example, is a picture of the Trifid Nebula. This is a region of star formation. Again, if you could go back about 4.5 billion years ago, this is the kind of region where the sun and solar system formed. When people look at the pictures taken with the wide-field planetary camera 2, the first question they often ask is the following. Why does it look like a stealth bomber? That's not what you know, what's going on here? Why does it have that strange shape? What's missing? The funny answer to that is that's where the money ran out. Usually that's where you stop. You say, well, that's where the money ran out. The reality is that that's where we killed a wag. When we repaired the Hubble Space Telescope, there came a moment that was just like the moment where things went wrong the first time. It was over budget, it was behind schedule, there were technical problems, Congress was breathing down our necks, Goddard Space Flight Center was picking on jet propulsion and back and forth. Everybody just wanted it to be okay. They believed it was going to be okay. They insisted it was going to be okay. The science team, on the other hand, of which I was a part, was looking at the plans to do the fix, and we said, you guys have made a whack. You guys have imagined that this instrument will be able to do something that it clearly will not be able to. Specifically, you were assuming that it will be able to keep the correction lined up with the incoming beam. And it won't. I didn't want to do anything about it. There finally came a meeting when the science team, the engineering staff, and a guy from NASA headquarters sat down and he said, okay, we're going to resolve this because we've got to move forward. The engineers made their case, we made our case. And he listened and he looked at us and he said, do you really believe that if we don't do what you want us to do, that is put in a different kind of correction, that this will fail? And we said, yeah, we really believe that. And he said, do you believe it enough to give up half the camera heads on the instrument? That is, do you believe it enough to trade capability to be sure that we're covering this thing that you think is a huge problem? And we said, yeah. It took about 2 seconds for us to say, we'll take that deal. They threw away half the cameras on our instrument. In a sense, they threw away half its capability. But really what they did was they kept 1, 2, 3, 4 eyes that would actually work. I'm really proud of that. That's where we killed the wag.
The mirror is a beautiful mirror. It's got a lovely shape. It's wonderfully smooth. It's just the wrong shape. But because it's such a beautiful mirror, it was possible to build instruments that would use that wrong shape and still make good images.
With Hubble on its way, the astronomers wait for the first images from the telescope. Their day of reckoning has arrived.
All of us were packed into this not terribly spacious room around maybe 1 or 2 computer terminals watching as everything came in.
It was an incredibly intense time.
What was at stake was, for the most part, the credibility of the program. quite a head rush, to be honest.
And I think when I look back on my career, I doubt that there will be another time to compare with being one of the people to stand there in front of all of our colleagues and say, this time we got it right.
Play your cards right, start fighting wags today, and you can survive a lot. There it is, reality straight up. When everything is on the line, what can you really know? You can know there are questions about which your opinions do not matter. You can know that the road to failure is paved with wags. You can know that the wag slayer's superpower is to stop looking for reasons to believe what you think is true and start looking for reasons not to. You can know that it's not easy, that it takes practice, that it's hard, and you can know that the place to start is with yourself, confronting ideas rather than people. Reality straight up. That's what it takes. We've got a superhero, the Wag Slayer. Superheroes have to have credos, so I'll leave you with the Wag Slayer superhero's credo. Be ever vigilant against wags. Have the courage and fortitude to challenge even cherished ideas, and have the honesty and integrity to follow where the challenge leads. Thank you very much.
Thank you.